Thank you so much. I'm delighted to join you today to talk about AI. And the title that we're going to talk about today is AI and how to stay in the room. And I remember when we first had a conversation with Naum about this, I was like, I don't think I'm the best person to talk about AI. But as I've grappled through this topic over the last couple of days and weeks, I've realized that it's something that means much to me. And I hope by the end of this conversation, it's also going to mean much to you. So in very good AI fashion, the next slide was actually AI generated. And then we can now go into our presentation with an AI joke. Guys, you need to laugh. It's the only funny part of this presentation today, so if you haven't laughed, you've lost your chance to laugh today. All right, so I want us to just think, or rather situate this whole conversation in Kenya. The next slide, we have about 3-point-something million formal jobs in Kenya, out of something like 15, 16 million jobs. Only 16% of jobs in Kenya are formal. So that means if you have a formal job in Kenya, you've won the lottery. You're one of 16% of people who have a formal job. I mean, even if it doesn't feel like it, you've won a lottery. But I think today we're not just interested in the formal jobs. I mean, the next slide talks about the kind of formal jobs that we have in the country. And as anticipated, the single biggest category of formal jobs will be, let's say, the public sector jobs. So if you think about all the government employees, civil servants, they comprise the biggest category of formally employed people in Kenya. And the next biggest category is teachers. So teaching, again, most of the teachers in the country are employed by the government. And when I speak with young professionals at New Life, I meet few who are teachers, and I know few are enthusiastic about teaching. Maybe you guys are different. Okay, maybe, sort of. I think like many of us aspire to get higher wage jobs. So I wanted to narrow down to the kind of jobs that, let's say, would pay 100,000 and above. And this now becomes quite different. Oh, no, not yet different. Only about 12% of jobs in Kenya will pay over 100,000 a month. I know 100,000 doesn't look like a lot, and many of us would probably believe or think or want to wish that the number of jobs that are earning more than 100,000 in Kenya, it's kind of high. I mean, if I were to step back, think of it. 16% of people formally employed. Of those 16%, 12% of those formally employed are now the ones who are earning over 100,000. And maybe these are the jobs that we aspire to get. Now, this number is global. So looking at the average pay, whether someone's just joined the sector, whether someone has been working in the sector for 20 or 30 years, this is the numbers, and the bulk, as you can see from here, 22% of them, I believe, will be in education. So, for those of us who didn't want to be teachers, 22%, that's by far the largest category of people who earn more than 100,000 are teachers. Anyway, I think when you go to the next slide, there's a little bit of a catch. For you to earn over 100,000 as a teacher, as a government employee, which dominate the previous slide, you'll need to have been working for a very long period of time. Now, today we are young professionals, so I thought, why don't we think of the kind of high-wage jobs that 30 to 40-year-olds will be getting? So I think if you're below 30 or slightly above 40, I think this will be something that you'll think about. And these jobs are dominated by finance, insurance, IT, and so on. Trade, wholesale trade, retail, so think about sales managers and things like that. And if you go to the next slide, so let me see, that's about, oh yes, but let's dwell a bit on the actually, this is the slide that I'm looking for. So, yeah, about 12, something like between 10 to 14% in each of those various categories. And if you put it all together, about 36% of the people who have high-wage jobs in our age group, or the age group that's seated in this room, will be having jobs, let's like in finance, ICT, sort of like consulting, with roles sort of like listed in detail on the slide. So things like financial analysts, account managers, sales managers, project managers, engineers, and so on. Go to the next slide, please. So let's say healthcare workers, project managers, operations managers, sales managers. And I think like, I mean, I hope like ChatGPT did really good research on this. So as I'm going through these slides, I hope you're saying, okay, I think that's talking about me. Is it? Oh, it's talking. Oh, perfect. Then we're on the right direction. So what I wanted to do next was to just help us visualize what does AI do to the kind of jobs that the people in this room either hold or aspire to hold. And AI projects that if we took this room of, I think, roughly 70 people, so let's extrapolate and say we're 100 people in this room, what ChatGPT projects is that in 5 to 7 years, the number of people in this room would have reduced to 70. So like 30% of us will not have their jobs as a result of AI. Okay, that's dramatic. So pause for effect. 30%. All right, the graphs are not very clear, but if I want, oh yeah, I think this is clear. So all across the board, let's like a really large change in finance and insurance, slight change in ICT, a lot of change in manufacturing and construction, transportation, huge change. So we expect about like 30 people in this room of 100 will not have their jobs in about 5 to 7 years. The next slide goes into a little bit more detail, just like giving like a broad categorization. So as I pointed out, when it comes to finance, research, routine IT, retail, transportation, those jobs are going to be quite affected by AI, so huge effect on that. When it comes to jobs like healthcare, senior leadership, I mean, AI can't make decisions for you. AI can't chat with your colleagues. So high-level strategic leadership, that will still remain. I mean, CEOs are not going to lose their jobs, but, okay, don't laugh. Yeah, so CEOs may not lose their jobs, or senior, I mean, very, very senior managers, although the caveat will be if they stay AI, I mean, if they're AI compliant, like if they use extensively AI to keep their jobs well. So if you're looking at sort of like this, I think gives you like a picture based on like the industry that you're in, how AI may affect you. In the next slides, I'm not going to go through all the various industries that I pointed out. I'm just going to use a few industries for illustrative purposes. So not all of you, I mean, will have this, but I hope I've already spoken enough about ChatGPT to give you a sense that you can actually go to ChatGPT and figure out, I mean, whether it's ChatGPT or Cloud AI or Gemini or whatever other AI tool that you're familiar or conversant with, to give like, I mean, to get like more context on what this might look like for you. Now, in finance, I said it, I mean, we just said in like the previous deck that it's one of the areas that's going to be quite affected. So if you're 10 people in finance in this room, we expect to lose, I mean, if you're 20 people in this room, we expect to lose like 7 of you in 5 to 7 years. And that's because AI automates a lot of things that we are, or rather that our jobs entail. So if I step back, about 15 years ago, there was a lot of automation in the, let's say, the banking industry, for instance. And that means if you go to any typical bank, or at least like the banking halls that I've frequented, you always typically find a lot more counters than there are people serving in those counters, because once upon a time you needed so many people to be serving customers in those. And that meant like most of the people who used to do, let's say, like the legwork, and that was who are then replaced by automation like mobile money or e-banking systems and so on. Now, those people went back to the offices to do analysis or to do risk or to do kind of like, so data-driven analysis. And AI is making this extremely easy to do. Maybe not extremely easy to do, but making it so much easier to do that employers, including me, I'll talk about my story a little later, are already thinking of ways to save costs, improve efficiency by having fewer people like the ones that are listed like on the slide. I'll go to the next page. About 20% reduction in professional, scientific, and technical services. So think about like your whole consultants. I'll use this as an illustration. So I had a really busy week, but to be honest, I also wanted to use this for dramatic effect in this presentation today. I started working on this presentation yesterday at 6:50 p.m. while on a mat on my way to town, and I was just like, where do I start? And I just like put all of that onto ChatGPT. All this data crunching, before AI, it wasn't possible for someone to do the night before. Oh, we also had a church board today morning, and I was, you heard I was the church clerk, so I was putting together all of that. So this is not the kind of work that you start doing at 6:50 p.m. the day before your church board and the day before you in front of all these cameras, but AI makes it possible. Previously, you would need like a research assistant to be able to do that, or you yourself need to become like a research assistant to be able to do that. So that kind of jobs, it's just like a 10% reduction in the need to do that, or 10, 20% or so on, but then it results in that net 20% reduction in the number of people who need to be sitting in this room. Go to the next slide. And then like when it comes to, let's say, retail, wholesale, again, there's a lot of automation that's now possible from AI mediated. Let's say like sales automation, I'm thinking like sales automation, whether that, so there's a first generation of sales automation that comes just like by having IT systems in place, but there's a second generation of sales automations where you're able to, let's say, set up your outbound channels, whether that's on Facebook and so on, without needing to hire the experts to be able to work on that. I'm not going to dwell so much on this page. As you can see, it's not really my forte. I'll come back to an example a little later on, talking about like wholesale trade. And then I'll give the last example that we're going to talk about is on the next slide, which is manufacturing and construction. Again, the kind of project management work that was previously necessary, that was really kind of like intense or detailed, the kind of opportunities that will provide high-wage jobs for the people in this room, those opportunities are going to step back. Now, I want to take a pause before going to the next 3 or 4 slides where we'll be focusing on how do you stay in the room, to put a little bit more color, more context to the last 4, 5 slides that I've mentioned. I said when Naum reached out to me, asked if I could talk about AI, my gut instinct was, no, I like talking about entrepreneurship. That's what I live on a day-by-day basis, but AI is not something that I live on a day-by-day basis, and so maybe I should talk about something else. But then I said, okay, I've already mentioned that as I'm thinking through this presentation, I realized there's a lot of ways in which AI already affects, influences, shapes what I do in ways that that directly bear on the conclusions that I was drawing that I need to share with you. I'll give two examples. Actually, I'll give 3 examples. So the first example, over the last 8 weeks, we've been working on a new embedded finance product. Okay, so what's an embedded finance product? An embedded finance product is, let's see, when you, let's say, want to go to, let me see, you want to buy a fridge at Nakumat and you don't have the money, not Nakumat, Naivas or QuickPart and you don't have the money, and at the point of purchasing the product, you're told, oh, you can Fuliza. Is it? Yeah, I think Fuliza is the one that does it on. That's an embedded finance product because you are at a supermarket just minding your own business in terms of just like trying to buy your fridge, but then the bank somehow walks into your life and gives you like credit at that loan. You don't need to walk to the banking hall to get that credit product, so embedded finance. Or let's say you want to, I think there's Mosmos, which is like, oh, I want to save this money over a long period of time before I purchase like the fridge. If it's offered as a standalone solution, then that's like a fintech product. But if it's offered, let's say you're coming to Zeraki and you say, I want to now save for my school fee, I want to save for my, or rather I want to take a loan for paying school fee, then that becomes embedded finance. Now, we are not embedded finance products, but we are education experts. And over the last 8 weeks, we've been working with a couple of the financial services companies in Kenya to develop like embedded finance solutions that are going to be embedded onto the Zeraki platform. 2 weeks ago, as we were tending towards coming up with very fine-tuned versions of this product, it occurred to me that for the first time, I was almost at the tail end of the product design process without having extensive conversations with the many friends that I have who are working in fintech or who are experts in that space. Because previously, I'll come up with an idea, sit down with them for coffee, then a coffee 2 weeks later, maybe a month later, to consult with them on how to make this product work well, to pace our implementation, and just to be sure that we're doing the right thing. But right now, what did we do? We went to ChatGPT, gave us like a whole play on if you want to roll out a new product, this is what you need to do. These are the questions you need to be thinking of. If you're partnering with, let's say like a bank, these are the questions that you need to be worrying about, whether from a legal perspective, from a compliance perspective, from a sales perspective, from a marketing perspective, from a distribution perspective. You see, all these things that we are not experts in, we're walking into the room and our partners think that we really know what we are talking about. We actually do because we had to write those prompts on ChatGPT. But the point is, previously, we would have needed to hire or either hire a full-time fintech expert to come and work with us, or at the very least, get a fintech consultant. And this is the kind of like high-wage jobs that we are all looking for. We would have needed to get that for us to get to this space. The second example I wanted to give is marketing. We now run a company of about 120 people. Marketing has been one of those things that we do as a by the way. Until this year, we realized we actually need to devote have a dedicated budget for this, hire 2 or 3 people to get into the team. And it may be curious for you to know that the person who's leading our marketing team right now, who was coming up with the whole strategy, has, I think, like 1.5 years of work experience, and she's doing a okay job. A good job. And that's something that would have been unthinkable, let's say 5 years ago, because you want someone who has a lot of experience, who's able to come up with the right strategic approach to guide the way a company of 120 people is going to implement their marketing resources. So number one would have been, tell us what you've done before, give us evidence of the kind of strategic work that you've done before. Again, the kind of high-wage job that a 30 to 40-year-old young professional will want to do. For us, because of AI, we can risk doing it with someone who's just like 1 or 2 years out of campus and learn with them. I know I said I was going to give 3 examples, but I hope like those 2 gives you a sense that when I'm walking through these slides, it's not just like something that's now theoretical or something that is futuristic. It's something that's happening here and now. And other employers are already thinking about the same things, putting pressure on the kinds of opportunities that we are thinking of, we would like to get for ourselves. So, what do we do? The next deck gives, again, the next slide gives some examples of some of the things that we can do to stay in the room. Again, I just focus on these 4 careers that we pointed out. So financial services, retail and wholesale, manufacturing, and professional services. And let's see. So in the financial and insurance activities room, as AI automates risk analysis, customer service, and so on, please learn AI-driven financial tools and specialize in compliance. I want to pause here, and I didn't plan to tell this story, but I think like it's probably important to drive the point home. So there's this joke that some of us may have seen, where two bad friends are walking in a forest, and a bear happens to, a bear appears, and one friend is like, "Oh no, we are dead." And the other friend is like, "No, we are not dead." And the friend is like, "Wait, are you going to outrun the bear?" The friend is like, "No, I just need to outrun you." Okay. I promise those are going to be like another joke. Okay, that was the second joke. So the point here, there are going to be 70 people who are going to be in this room. Let's say that in these 4 slides, we're trying to say that we're just trying to ensure that we are not part of the 30 who are going to be out of the room. We're going to be part of the 70 who stay in the room. And if that's you within the financial and insurance activities room, you want to be the person who's making the AI-related strategies for your institution or organization, so that as the other people are getting displaced by AI, your role becomes even more important or more critical within the organization. And for you to get to that space, is what you're saying, you need to start learning how to or rather use AI-driven financial tools, specializing in compliance. But the point is, the stuff that can be automated will keep getting automated. The stuff that cannot be automated, the strategic, nuanced kind of roles, are the ones that are going to persist. The next slide, please. If you're in the professional and scientific technical fields, again, so as AI-enhanced research grows, you need to master AI-assisted analysis and strategy. So I'll give an example. 2 years ago, when we joined the young professionals team at New Life, we used to take like all these surveys. And surveys are very easy when you're collecting them, but when you're analyzing them, it's a pain. Because you have, let's say, 120 people who responded to 7 different questions, and you want to know that whole permutation, 120 times 7, that's not even like the total number of permutation of answers that you're getting from that. You want to simplify it in 3 or 4 points that will resonate with most of those people. Before ChatGPT, that would be like a 4 or 5 day activity if it's sort of like dedicated to it. Right now, you just like feed it into ChatGPT or Cloud. No, I was actually like, ChatGPT is not good at it, but Gemini is good at it. So you just like plug it into Gemini, everybody thinks like you, fantastic. But the truth is, you get a near perfect answer within minutes, and you move on to the next analysis and so on. So make sure to learn to master AI-assisted analysis and strategy tools. The next, so when it comes to wholesale and retail, so AI-driven inventory sales chatbots as they proliferate. So focus on, again, first learning the tools and becoming adept at using those tools. But then there are also areas that may not be replaced with AI as soon. Let's say human interaction, human engagement. Let's say if the engagement is happening on digital spaces, that's now easier for AI to do. I mean, 5 years ago, you used to go through the automatic voice responses when we answer calls. And most of us, if you're like me, I'll wait until it says speak to the operator. So I'll just go and speak to the operator. But right now, most AI chatbots that you're going to find on websites, they'll answer your questions to your level of satisfaction, so you no longer need to speak to that. But when it comes to B2B sales, they still want to see you, touch, feel, I don't know, put a name to the face and so on. So those ones, it might be a while before they're replaced with AI. So maybe those are sort of like some of those things where you may stay in the same room, but by moving slightly to the left, to the right, and taking on an adjacent opportunity. Then the last one, in manufacturing and construction, again, the key point here is master the tools. And yeah, so master tools, whether it's like in operations and in logistics. So this is quite a handful. And you may then be wondering, how do I get started today? Now, oh gosh, so many stories that I hadn't intended to tell, but maybe stories, I think like they help ground things. It's one thing to learn how to swim by reading a book, by watching other people swim, watching the Olympics and so on. It's yet a whole different experience to actually swim. Now, for me, one of my passions, again, photography. I remember like taking like a photography course about 10 years ago, but the most critical tool about learning how to become a better photographer is take many photographs. So take 1,000 photos and then agonize over, okay, of these 5 photos, which are the 2 that I should keep, because I don't have unlimited space on my hard disk. And with each of the interactions or engagements that you're having, trying to figure out of these 5 photos, I want to remain with only 2. Why should I delete this? Why should I keep this? You're incrementally learning how to become better at identifying a good photo. With every next photo that you're taking, you're becoming incrementally that better at identifying if I'm inside this sanctuary, what lighting do I need to have, what lens do I need to have, what exposure, you know, all those little tiny things that you learn over time. So much that the more experienced photographer will more generally be the person who has been more deliberately taking photographs over a long period of time. In a similar way, you can't become a master in using ChatGPT. No, you can't become a master in using AI tools if you actually do not use AI tools on a regular basis. Anyone can type something into ChatGPT. Only a few people are able to get something meaningful out of ChatGPT. And you only learn how to become better at getting something out of ChatGPT, Cloud, Perplexity, you name it, whichever the tool is, you only become better at doing it if you immerse yourself in it. For me, that journey started last year. I think I've been on the paid version of ChatGPT for the last 12 to 14 months or something like that. Kind of expensive, $20, but if I think of any one of the single assignments that I do with ChatGPT, it pays for for the investment so many times better. It's not just like a conversation partner, but it's like a really great engagement partner. One of the things that most managers or people doing like strategy jobs will tell you, the most difficult thing is to find someone that you can bounce ideas off of. ChatGPT, you can bounce any idea off of. Wait, is this like a good JD to have? Okay, what should I need to be thinking about to make it better? What if you look at this, what's missing in this other? Like there's so many of those permutations, but just like swimming, just like photography, just like most other things where the 10,000 rule applies, even with AI that applies. So what do? Take us to the next slide. Hope is not a strategy, but starting today is. So I hope that I have managed to persuade you to not bank on hope Go to the last slide. But to be the person who's not going to be replaced with AI. So we started at the beginning with funny boss, but it turns out that AI will actually replace, this is technically not true based on what we said, because we said in that room of 100, we'll have 70 people remaining. So yes, people will actually be replaced by AI. But more accurately, if you are the person with AI, most likely the person who's going to replace you is going to be the person who has mastered the use of AI. And I hope that all of you guys here will be the ones who are going to stay in the room as AI disrupts.
Maybe I'll start with myself. I felt triggered when you were talking about AI because I'm in an industry where 10 years ago when I was doing research in the finance industry, it would take me a week to get data, but then now it takes me less than an hour. In fact, it would take, let's say, 3 days to do a slide. Now it takes me 1 hour. So I was just, as you were saying, I was like, I'm feeling it. So I need to find a strategy outside Hope to be able to implement it. Now, you didn't mention anything to do with the health industry. So is there any hope that the health industry will be spared?
So I think like health and other regulated industries might persist for a while. So let's say education, for instance. Even if you have the best technology, putting that technology in the classroom involves layers and layers of bureaucracy from one agency, let's say one government agency to another, and rightly so because education is kind of like critical. You want a very measured and risk-averse approach towards doing that. And now health is pretty much to the extreme end of that spectrum. You don't want AI to be doing that medical review, and AI right now hallucinates. Comes up with things that are not even that do not even exist. So you don't want that hallucination to happen in your own case. So it will be a while before it gets fully disrupted. But that said, there's a lot of support services within the healthcare ecosystem that will probably be automated a lot more. So whether that comes from, medical records, for instance, I think it's much easier to now put them on electronic medical records, and then that information can be mined to get more information. So maybe that consultant who would previously only be able to see 5 patients because they want to do the deep research that brings together all that perspective, with AI, they'll probably be able to see 6 or 7, and that diminishes the opportunity for the person who's coming into the field. So eventually it affects all of us. The trick is we want to be the people who end up staying in the room as other people are disrupted out of the room.
Thank you for that. Anyone with a question?
Praise God.
Amen.
My name is Eric Obocha. I have a question. The question is, how are we going to prevent AI from affecting our social life, and as well as how it is going to protect ourselves from it affecting mostly our eyes, because mostly working on technology for long hours leads to migraines and something of sort, eyesight loss, such things. And again, what online platform would you recommend for someone to learn AI tools on right now? Maybe there's a platform where we can go and learn all the AI tools. And lastly, I am told you are to share your background story on how you came to be who you are. Kindly share with us.
I think, Joseph, if you don't mind, before we go to Cliff, let him answer. I think those were 2 or 3 questions in one. So
I think it was 4 questions for Eric. So I think in terms of the tools that you can get started with, there was the last slide, the third last slide that was giving just an example of some of the areas that you can focus on depending on the areas that you're interested in. So it could be you're interested in photography, or you're interested in so Adobe, for instance, or let's say you're interested in photography or videography, you go for a different tool. If you're interested in writing, if you're interested in research, even when it comes to coding, I think for those of us who are in the software industry, I was just listening to a blog, or rather to a podcast yesterday, where the Y Combinator, which is where you have the best startups globally, typically go to the Y Combinator. I think in that post they were saying that 75% of the founders in their current cohort say that 95% of the code for their products was written with AI. Like 95% of the code for their product was AI generated. So that's why I'm saying, even though AI is something like tech related, AI will still affect the number of tech jobs. So depending on what your industry is, your focus will be different. There was the question about, oh boy, I thought I had it, but then I skipped a bit.
Something about social.
Oh yes, how AI disrupts. So the thing is, as with every good thing, some good things come without natural barriers. So I'll pick this up from a health talk that was given in the TMI, Hope for Africa series a year or two ago, where they're saying our bodies, for instance, are naturally weak to sugar. And that's reasonable because a lot of the foods that are naturally found don't have too much sugar. You have to put in a lot of effort to be able to consume the sugar, whether that's even like sugar cane. However much you like it, at some point your teeth just, your jaws get tired. But if you have like sweets, then you can take too much sugar and so on. And there is something that not just AI, but social media has managed to tap into our own psyches. Think of it, some of the world's smartest people just trying to figure out where our emotional vulnerabilities are and how software can fit into or plug into those vulnerabilities, making social media and a lot of media quite addictive. Now, there's already been some form of pushback. So for instance, in the Silicon Valley, a lot of the same people who build this software, they don't want their kids to touch tech at home because they understand how horrible tech can be when people are young. So even as we're thinking about how to use these tools, we need to think of how to protect ourselves from the worst excesses. Now, AI can also make some of the excesses you're talking about more bearable. So for instance, previously, when it comes to doing your research, you needed to type it out, but right now, for most of the chat, or rather, from the chat AI tools, you can speak, you can even take like images and so on. So it might actually make it easier to interact or engage with that. There's a question about my story. Maybe I can take it at the end, because it might be a little long. So let me handle the other questions, and then we'll talk about like the story.
Hello, thank you, Isaac. That was really beautiful. And it's impressive to see how much you actually use these tools. I just find it very interesting that you do that. My question is around a risk factor, because we have some really, really persuasive tools out there, and everything they produce looks okay. Actually, it looks correct. My fear is that no one is doing their due diligence to actually confirm anything that comes out of an AI chatbot window. And I don't know how you cope with that as you use it more and more in the work setup, so that you're not spreading disinformation that came out of, because the tools are powerful, the tools are great at what they do, but the tools can also make mistakes. And so I'd just like to hear you out as you encourage everyone to go and use AI tools. How exactly do you mitigate for that very thing?
That's a really fantastic question to ask, and a very nuanced one that goes back to what I was mentioning, that your experience and exposure in using these tools is what makes it really powerful. So, just think about like this presentation that I made. The reason why I didn't mention it, but the reason why I was able to do it again in the 40, 50, or rather no, in the 3-4 hour time segment is that this is actually an area that I have an interest in. So I know the kind of questions to ask. I know the kind of appropriate pushback to make to the AI. So at some point, I'll just like, no, ChatGPT, you're taking me for a ride. You need to give me something else. And they're like, okay, yeah, I'll go do it again. No, but this, that's sort of like pushback or conversation or engagement that you'll be able to have, or rather you can only have it if you yourself have a measure of expertise, knowledge, know-how, both on the facts, but also on, let's say, the argument or even the strategic direction that this needs to take. So it's not to say that anyone using ChatGPT will be able to come up with something here. Actually, I just found the right joke. It's just like not anyone who can play the piano can produce a masterpiece, or not anyone who can write in English can write a novel. So it's the same way, like what these chatbots have done is to remove the technical barrier for most people, but it just makes it easier for people who are really good on the strategic elements to come out of their shell and to shine through. So what I hope is learning how to be conversant with, comfortable with, and versatile with the tools enables you to stop thinking about the tools. So we're no longer looking for someone who is good in R or someone who is good in computing with Excel. We're looking for someone who's able to come up with a better business decision as a result of, previously it was Excel, but right now with ChatGPT occupying that space or the other tools that we're talking about, makes you much better at making decisions. And that's something that takes a while and deliberate engagement.
I hope that has been, you're satisfied with the answer. We'll take, I think, 2 last questions here, and then he will answer the final question on his story. Joseph, I think there are 2 hands here. Sure. Oh, there was a hand there. Okay, let me just...
Hi, Isaac.
Hi, Orlando.
Thank you for the presentation. My name is Orlando. I have 2 questions. I think there's a couple of negativity around AI. Some people would say it lowers the thinking capacity of human beings. So as someone who's in the edtech space and passionate about education, does that worry you? Especially now that it's replacing time taken for research and all that. And then my second question was generally, are there caution that maybe you can share with us as we move towards embracing AI? Or it's generally 100% good for our consumption?
No, nothing is good, especially a tool as powerful as AI cannot be good. So I think there needs to be several guardrails. Let me just like focus, let's say, on education, for instance, where what you're hinting at, that AI is not allowing students to, let's say, think for themselves or people to learn how to think for themselves. Let me put it this way. When we were learning how to do 1 + 1, or even the multiplication tables, you already had the log books. Okay, depends on how old you are. You know what the logarithmic tables are. And then at some point, you learn how to use a calculator and so on. And if you're thinking about the progression of the curriculum, there are things that were introduced to us when we were in grade 1 or class 1 that by the time you're in grade 5, you're wondering, why did they need to go through this trouble? And by the time you're getting to, let's say, Form 4, you realized, oh, if they didn't teach me this in class 1, then I couldn't have grasped the full concept in class 5. And then the thing that we were taught in, let's say, Form 3 would not have made sense. Now, when it comes to math and the sciences and all those other fields, there's already been a lot of work that has happened to figure out what step-by-step, what steps do you need to take in order to learn the big one. In other words, you probably first have to learn the vowels before learning the words, before learning the sentences and the paragraphs, and so on. Now, what you're mentioning is true in that AI potentially disrupts that process, because without AI, to train someone how to think, you could actually ask them to write an essay, but because the essay will not just like materialize, someone would actually have to think in order to write that essay. I submit like thinking is still really critical, and whoever can think, just like to go back to the question that I answered previously, the person who's able to think, who has the right context, whether the context is in terms of like what the facts are, what the right argument is, what the general strategic direction, that's the person who's going to be really good at figuring out how to make the best use of AI. Now, these skills might be learned with support of AI, but these skills, I believe, will also necessarily need to be learned without the use of AI, so that those skills are quite drummed in. So that will be, for instance, the equivalent of saying, when did Namibia get its independence? The teacher knows that if you have your phone in the exam room, you can Google it. And so they say like, no, we're not going to allow you to have the phone in the exam room, because we actually want you to cram that fact. And the person who has crammed a lot more of those facts will generally be better when it comes to Google, because they know how one fact adds up with the other and so on to come together.
Yeah, as I go to the next question, I have the advantage of holding the mic. I've been on with teams, and in the morning we learned about teamwork, where you discuss and come up with solutions to an issue, taking the rationale of one person and another. With AI, what is the place of teamwork? And do you think it would be very wise when we overdepend on AI at the expense of embracing teamwork in getting solutions to challenges, as you answered the question by Isaac?
I think it's something that cuts both ways. So I was giving my own personal reflections where, I mean, it was more like a coffee conversation, so it's more like a team of one conversation where you're bouncing ideas off of one person. It could be two people within the same thing, where the engagement was necessitated by the fact that I can't do this alone. I need the people around me. Does that mean that that's no longer necessary? Actually, no. All it has done, it means like the preliminary work that I needed to do within a team setting, and here we're talking about engaged teams, right? We're not talking about like the team of bad people. We're talking about the good team where everybody's energy feeds off of each other. What it now just simply does, it means by the time the team is coming together for these conversations, everybody is on a different level, and it becomes magical. So that's why I mentioned like the people or the teams that are using AI become even better, and I hope that the people who are in this hall are the ones who are going to be doing that.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
My name is Isaac.
Namesake.
Yeah. Thanks for that session. It was quite insightful. I have a question, actually a risk factor, because I believe those AI tools are owned by people, and we may be tempted to share so much data in those tools. How secure is it?
Are you on Facebook?
Yes.
Do you use an Android phone? They know everything about you already. And you also use Gmail. I was worried about, wait, ChatGPT will know so much about me. And then I realized that between Microsoft, Google, Facebook, they already know everything about me. So sadly, I think the age of privacy died in 2004 or 5 when Facebook was founded. Yeah, it is what it is.
Okay, happy Sunday.
Happy Sunday.
My name is Lawrence, and I have a technical question.
Yeah.
It has been bothering me for now, since I introduced myself to AI. And I'm going to derive the question from the book of Daniel 12:4 that says, knowledge will be increased. Now, what is therefore the role of the church, or the position of the church in the emergence of artificial intelligence in the 4th industrial revolution?
Yeah. I think there's a verse that comes to mind when, I I think there's a parable about the servant who was going to be fired. And then he went around asking how much do you owe? I don't know, it was 1,500. He said, okay, write 800. How much do you owe? 1,000, write 600, and so on. And I think like Jesus says, like, the sons of the world are a lot more. Yes, that one. And I think there's also like a place where, I don't know whether it's within the same verse, where it says, learn how to be as sly as foxes and as tame as doves. Serpents, yeah. Okay, I sort of know the vicinity of those verses, but not the exact one. But if you ask me, I'll say like these tools become really powerful for us. I'll give you an example. A few months ago, when running Bible study for the young professionals, that's with at New Life. And then we realized that the kind of questions that were indicated in the Bible study guide, that's the Bible study lessons, were not very engaging. And here's how I saw it. So there will be, let's say on the Sunday part, they'll ask, read verse this. What does the verse say? Now, the challenge with such a question is, for the people who read it, it's too easy to reply. For the people who didn't read it, they are lost. So we thought about, what if we could just like flip around the lesson and actually ask engaging life-related questions around the lesson. So let's say you're talking about life on let's say the place of hell or something like that. So it could be, what does the story of Lazarus say? Okay, read verses, John chapter 11, and figure out what does verse 5 say. And it's already said it. But the flip could be, your friend is going through a difficult time. They've always been in church for a while, and they're asking, where is God? Now you see, that's a question that everybody in the room can have an answer to, including the person who hadn't read the lesson. But they have the question. But now you've also intrigued them to go read the lesson. Now, coming up with those questions for like a really engaging lesson is really difficult. But with ChatGPT, turns out you can do it in like 4 or 5 hours. So the same tool that could be used in other contexts for evil or for non-glorified uses, we as sons of the light can also use it in really powerful ways to engage with us. So I think like it's something that we can, yes, the knowledge is increasing. It's crazy, the amount of stuff that we can now do with AI right now. But that also means from a gospel perspective, we can also do it. We can also do a lot more right now than the previous generation of evangelists, missionaries, and so on needed to do.
I think we will pause there. If you do have questions, you may reach out to him personally. There's one pending question about his, I think, entrepreneurial story. So I don't know whether you can wrap it up in a few minutes, 5 minutes or so.
Yes, I'll give a much shorter version because I had what, I wasn't here in the morning when Paul was speaking, but I had he mentioned a few things in his talk that really resonate with my own experience. Number one, I think he said something to the extent, love your job. I think he said something like that, right? And I think someone asked, how can you love your job if your job is not lovable? And then I realized, at the time, I'm just looking for the best analogy to explain this. And there's this book I was reading recently about Christian service, and it was talking about this guy who was afraid of madmen. So he's walking at night, he's afraid of madmen. So he's walking at night, and then there's a mad person who starts running towards him, and he's terrified. And then he starts running back, and then a leopard starts running after him. And then he's like, okay. Now running towards the madman now feels like a better idea than running from the leopard. So entrepreneurship is like running from the leopard. If you think like having a job is bad, try entrepreneurship. That's why I listened carefully. Okay, he gave a little bit of, I think at one point in the conversation he said, have that job and love it. And then at some point he sort of mentioned that if you have a passion, you can go try out like an idea out there. Yeah, so maybe that's the one thing I'll say, don't try it. But if you really are passionate so much that you'll ignore this advice, then go do it. And there'll be like a longer story around it. So in my case, the very short version of what it costs to build Zeraki to be what it is. Let's see. My monthly salary right now is still less than it was 10 years ago. Just like Tom mentioned, that you, the one who worries about everybody else getting their salaries, that's what I worry about every day. So even before thinking about, do I deserve or do I need a raise, I have to think about, do we have enough money for everybody else? And if we don't, then you actually just like shelve that idea. For us to grow into the largest edtech in this space, for the first 6 years, the office, no, for the first 4 years, 2015 to 2019, the office was in my house, which means there was no privacy, no whatever. And then for the next 3 years, I was living in the office. So for the last 10 years, it's only in the last 2.5 years, okay, I think now approaching 3 years, that I've been actually living in my own house, and it feels like freedom. And this is having had a 7-year career before that. So there might be people who are fortunate for their journey to be easier, but underline that line, fortunate. And you are likely not to be fortunate. You're likely to go the long, hard route. That's why most people who've actually started a company will advise you to love your job. So that if you go and do it, you don't blame them for misguiding you. But that said, if you're that passionate, then in spite of all this challenge, you'll find it at something that's really fruitful to do. So if that then happens to be you, maybe in a different forum, we can have like a longer conversation on, okay, so how do you manage it? How do you do it? I hope that didn't take 5 minutes.
Oh, okay, I just want to add one small question. Maybe it will help augment what you've shared. If I had to take you back to, I think you said 2015, that's when you started. How would you walk your entrepreneurial journey differently now that you know what you know now? Okay, first, would you even be an entrepreneur? Maybe I should start with that.
So I'll take a little bit of a spiritual, put a spiritual response to this, because actually it's, entrepreneurship has ended up making me more spiritual. By the way, it's statistical. There's a Harvard Business School study that says entrepreneurs are 15 to 20% more spiritual than others. You can go Google it. But the thing is, Paul talks a lot about suffering, and he says, there's this verse where he says, and we all rejoice in our suffering, because our suffering brings perseverance, character, hope, and hope does not disappoint us. Now, if it was possible for God to get us to that point of hope without using suffering, he surely would have done it, right? But no, he understands like you actually have to walk through this painful journey to actually get the fruit, which is like hope. So in a similar way, there's a lot of painful things I've gone through, and all entrepreneurs will tell you that they've gone through. But without those pain, the lessons that they end up learning will not be learned. So there's literally little that I can point to. I'll struggle to think of, which lesson was not important? I'll tell you, this was painful. That one also was very painful. But every one of those painful moments is the reason why I'm sitting here, or rather I'm standing here today.